Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to Myths and Legends, and let's go ahead and let's take a walk. Tonight, it's a beautiful night, but it's a little bit chilly. My arms are cold, and my mouth feels a little bit numb, so hopefully we can warm up as we go. I should have grabbed a hoodie, but I didn't want to wake up the family and go into the room to grab one. I thought I would warm up during the walk, which I did, but face still gets cold, arms are still cold, whatever. So today I wanted to talk about symbolism, and well, I guess every day I talk about that, but I'm going to try to drive it from some stuff directly. So mythology can simply be understood by the world that it inhabits. And what is that world? You might be thinking, well, there's world building, there's, all these different, some have multiple worlds, whatever. And it's like, yeah, fair enough. But they essentially all share the same thing. The known, and then, the unknown. And then I guess the threshold between the two. And the unknown can be it's chaos. It's all the creatures and dangers that lurk beyond your borders, and then the known is Eden. It's the it's the comfortable paradise, essentially. It's home. I guess it doesn't have to be paradise, but it's understood and it makes it home. Okay? So, why is this important? Well, you kind of want to look into how humans react to the unknown, how they react to chaos. When you're first approached by it, it elicits fear, essentially. The first action may be pause, and that pause is in place because of that anxious feeling. And imagine when you see an animal come across a predator, there's that initial pause. Or when you jump scare somebody, they don't operate under normal, what would be normal means. They don't go into normal functions. You see, people think that they understand who they are, but it's very difficult to know who you truly are until you've been put into a situation that is chaos, that is unknown. Now, the anxiety, the pause, it protects you. It gives you a brief moment. Sometimes it's not brief, but it gives you, in general, a moment to assess the dangers. You think, okay, well, I'm not hurt yet, so I then have to explore this unknown territory. And the exploration is aroused by the sense of wonder. Okay, so that's sort of a brief overview of it. Chaos is often depicted as snake-like, serpents, dragons. Okay? And one of the main reasons for that is because of, look at man's relationship historically to serpents. When you see a snake, you sort of watch it and wonder. You're trying to predict behavior. So you're sort of, staring at it with interest and intrigue and wonder. It's sort of the thing that motivates people to watch horror movies, really. Horror movies allow you to explore the chaos and the unknown and challenge yourself against it, you know. And that's what a lot of stories do. They don't have to be horror stories, though, to have the creatures of chaos in them. And why is the unknown scary? I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? You don't know what it's going to do to you. But oftentimes, it's the wonder and curiosity that builds you. If you stay at home and you don't explore, you don't grow. You know, there's value in the exploration of the unknown, and that's what a lot of our stories are based on. Essentially, your hero character decides to go out into the unknown and conquer it. You know, he might have to go slay the dragon. You look at Lord of the Rings, the dragon guards the gold. Well, the gold can be seen as the reward for conquering the unknown. That's where the riches are. Something interesting too about dragons is we get the sense that they're ancient creatures, eternal creatures. And that's true, you know, of the unknown. It is ancient, you know. That's why, you know, our responses to encountering it are primitive, ancient. I mean, even single-celled organisms have, you know, the attract and retract, you know, responses to certain stimulus. So the fight or flight, or, you know, that's old stuff there. And so we find it in our stories. And that's not to say all stories are this, but Joseph Campbell laid out, you know, the hero's journey pretty well, and you can warp it and bend it to various circumstances, to various other stories. Another thing about chaos is it's often depicted as feminine. And why is that? Well, because, you know, the chaos creature is the mother of all fears. Your initial response to fear is all the things that expose your vulnerabilities. So oftentimes you'll see creatures that are multiple creatures put into one, and you see that in dream interpretation as well, that monsters within dreams are a culmination of various types of fears. I mean, the dragon has wings, it has snake-like qualities, it breathes fire, it can be like the lion, and so on and so forth. Now, the dragon doesn't always have to be killed. The dragon can also be conquered and tamed. And just like in real life, once you explore the unknown, you can become good at a thing, good at a skill. You can be comfortable in a new environment. You know, I think of the first part of the Dune film just dropped, and you see at the end somebody riding the worm. If you read the books, you'll know that the worms are conquered by the Fremen. Well, the worms are the dragon, serpent-like, and they guard the gold. In the case of Frank Herbert's Dune, the gold is the spice melange, right? That's the wealth that the worm actually helps produce in their evolutionary cycle and protect. So the worm's the dragon, though, can be conquered. And actually, in the first book, when Paul Atreides finally conquers the worm, when he conquers a large one, it's ancient, right? And he uses this as a way to defeat his enemies, to regain his position that was inherently his, right? His destiny. Okay, so that's the simple one. That's the one that most people know, the hero's journey. You know, they know it through Star Wars, they know it through Dune, you know, they know it through the knight who leaves home to slay the dragon. They know that one. Okay. So let's go into another story. You know me, I'll go theological here. When talking about Genesis, there too you see the serpent, and the serpent's in the garden. And we know that serpents are lurking in the unknown, but they can also come into the home base, home territory. You know, this is where order is. Now, I'll get to it, but from this is where we can start to understand where humanity really starts to go in the wrong direction. You see, the known is also coupled with culture, and coupled with culture is theology. Humans will defend home, will defend their territory, just like an animal does, but they will also defend their theological territory. People will die for what they believe in. Part of the problem is sometimes what people believe in different things, okay? So not all things you believe are true. And beliefs, the problem with them can be they fill in gaps. They fill in gaps of what you know. Because in fact, when you walk through the world, the majority of things that you encounter hold some kind of mystery to them. They have unknowns. So chaos is in front of you all the time. You're just really good at ignoring it, because humans are good at paying attention, you know, to what is important. So, you know, relevance realization. You realize what is relevant. There's a whole process in how you do that. But so let's unpack how this becomes a problem for humans, right? Okay, so ancient stories tend to hold a lot of good truths in them. So let's go to Genesis. Okay. So what is God? Let's start there. What is God? God is the abstraction of the infinite, the totality of the infinite, right? He's not some old man in the sky with a book writing down, recording the rights and wrongs that all humans have done. Okay? That pop culture view of him lessens the importance of what he represents, of what he is. Okay, so why is that important too? Remember the little Greek gods I was telling you about before. Greek gods, or I mean just any polytheistic gods, are limited. If you derive your ethics from them, or if you derive your ethics, and I mean from them as the source, the top of the mountain, let's say, of understanding. Let's say you're at the top of the mountain. All that's below you is what you've collected in the world of meaning and symbolism. That's your understanding, and from you, what's above you, you derive your ethical systems to help guide you through the world as a sort of course that you'll follow. And I talk about course a lot in my Exodus series, and hopefully we'll get the rest of those up there for you soon and go into some other stories. But okay, so God, he's what makes him unique to the other gods. This the rest of the Elohim, let's say, is he is not limited. Okay, he represents the totality of all things that have passed, that are yet to come. And in a lot of ways, he is chaos, but he also is what is known. He's both. Okay, so He creates a known world, and on the sixth day, he creates Adam and Eve. In this paradise, they are comfortable and they are not self-conscious. They're not aware of their vulnerabilities, nor do they have to be, because they live harmonious with the beasts, with nature, and they walk with God. There's another aspect too, I should say, before we get to Eve, there's a belief that's in multiple beliefs, like Mesopotamian belief as well, that first man is sort of hermaphroditic, and the creation of Eve is the split of the two. Male and female hold equal parts of what is divine. We were created in God's image. That's not to say that God looks or is human-like. It's to say that humanity has a bit of divinity within them, because they're like gods in the sense that they can create. If you look at the Mesopotamian creation myth with Marduk and Tiamat, Marduk chops the dragon up, the sea serpent, chaos, chops it up into pieces and creates the world from it. Okay? And God, in the Christian sense, creates the world out of sort of a chaotic existence. And Marduk also created man in his image. So I guess we could go into that too. I think I go into it in Exodus, but why would it be important to say that Marduk, casts Tiamat in a net and cuts her up into little pieces? Well, that's a good way to tackle your problems, isn't it? To net it up, hold it in its place, find an understanding of it, and take it down one piece at a time. And from it, you can create the world. If God can create in that fashion, if Marduk can create in that fashion, we also create in that fashion. That's a part of our divinity. We have immense amounts of power and influence on the world. In fact, each positive and negative action you take reverberates outward, and we'll go into that as well. Okay, so we know that the snake gets into the garden. Now, the snake can be in the outside world. We've established it can be in the world that we're comfortable with, showing us that there is a little bit of chaos in paradise, which is true. It always lurks on the barriers, but it's always within as well, and can be within us all, and we are hesitant. We sometimes can find it in other people and are hesitant to interact with them. That's why we have a lot of rituals that we do that we don't even really think about anymore, to try to prove to one another that we mean no harm. One thing that's really cool about humans, well, one of the traditions is we shake hands to show that we have no weapons, right? We all know that. Or that maybe we're not sweating, that we're not clammy, that we're trying to be honest. Another thing is we pay attention to our eyes. Our eyes have the whites, unlike many other creatures, and we can see from a pretty good distance where we're looking. And one of the things that'll often make a characterization of like a cartoon or something cute is having big eyes. Big eyes can be pretty trustworthy because you can always see where they're looking. And often we'll depict demons or spider-like creatures or whatever, monsters with black eyes and soulless eyes, like Jaws' eyes are described as black, soulless, whatever, holes, because you can't predict the actions of a creature with black eyes as easy as you can a human. We can see, eyes are the windows to the soul for that reason. So, okay. Anyway, so Eve offers Adam the fruit because of the deception of the serpent. The serpent within the garden is able to deceive her quite easily. He eats the fruit. The first thing that happens is his eyes open to the actual state of his reality. He realizes that he is a vulnerable and weak creature. Okay? And through this, Eve also becomes self-conscious. And this is pretty accurate because women do make men self-conscious, since they are the ones that get to choose mates for the most part. You know, it's about like 2 times the amount of your ancestors are actually female than they are male, because women are usually more often successful in reproduction as they are the selective one, and the males are usually the ones turned down. So this makes sense. So now Adam is self-conscious, and God comes down, and Adam tries to hide from God. Now, if you take what I said earlier about God representing the infinite in its totality, well, then he also represents the thing that Adam could obtain. So he hides from that destiny. He hides from that chaos and that now understood unknown. And it's kind of silly because, you know, you can't really hide from God, but he does it anyway because he's terrified. Now, all of that is prehistory. They're kicked out of the Garden of Eden, thrown into history, okay? Now, then you have your first 2 human beings, meaning actually born from Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve were created, Eve from Adam by God, and Adam directly by God from the earth. Okay, but Cain and Abel are born directly from human beings, so they're the first real humans. And there are 2 views that one can have on the self-conscious realization that you're a finite creature living in the infinite and amongst the unknown, both the chaos and, you know, what you would deem as the order, the known. And, you know, Abel properly makes his sacrifices to God. And, you know, he works hard. And in life that rings true. You have to sacrifice the best to obtain the best. You sacrifice time. You sacrifice relationships often. You sacrifice money. You know, you pay for experience. You know, you pay for mistakes. So you make sacrifices. And there's a good symbolism in why ancient people would burn sacrifices, because smoke goes upward. God traditionally is seen as being up in the sky because, well, if you look up at the sky, that's the only way you really have contact with the totality, the infinite. So God would inhabit that space, right? Okay, so then you've got Cain, and Cain does not sacrifice the best. Okay, he keeps the best for himself, and his life plays out in an unsatisfactory way. He becomes bitter, he becomes resentful, he becomes arrogant. And when he approaches God about this, God gives him the news that he doesn't want to hear. Cain, it is in fact you who is the cultivator of your life's misery. And so then, you know, what does Cain do? He rejects this truth. He rejects reality. And he kills his brother because his brother is that constant tension, that constant reminder of his shortcomings. And he wants to not have it in front of his face anymore, and so he destroys him. that ties back to what I was saying earlier. We get in a lot of trouble when we end up off course. We get in a lot of trouble when we decide that we are the ones who will try to control reality. When we try to impose our beliefs onto reality. And if we find that we're wrong, we can become increasingly bitter. When we find what we might see as injustices to ourselves and to others, we become bitter because we don't want to accept the way that reality is laid out. Okay, so then what happens with Cain? Well, God doesn't punish him necessarily. He marks him. And Cain goes off with his wife, and they produce offspring. And there's a rippling effect from Cain's bad choice and resentment ripples outward. That if you do wrong to his child or his next generation, they'll kill you sevenfold. If you harm their grandchildren, it's 70 more. And further on, 700 and on and on. And this is true. Murder can often elicit vengeance. Look what happened to the world when a crooked cop and a criminal had a terrible, terrible interaction. The whole world went mad. In fact, there are camps of people who don't even want me to call Floyd a criminal, even though that he has that history. He has increased his chances of interacting with law enforcement. And then Derek, the crooked cop, and his fellow cops with him did not act honestly or goodly. Their actions reverberated throughout the world, setting off chaos and disorder. Much like 9/11 shown that the ideal was falling, that the king had fallen, and people, watched it over again and again and again and again because they couldn't understand exactly what they were seeing. I mean, this could have been to them, yes, the collapse of a building, but are we under attack? Is it a terrorist attack? And then the question of, is the economy going to collapse? Is, society going to collapse? And so on, right? And so people watched it over and over and over again. And the response that we had immediately wanted was vengeance. And so we lied or were lied to, and about 2 generations have since sacrificed in a conflict that wasn't directly related to the evil action that happened. So, when we act dishonest and we don't make the proper sacrifices, and if we don't approach chaos in an appropriate way, and we don't treat nature in an appropriate way, it reverberates outward. So what's the next story after Cain and Abel? The Great Flood. Tell me, is that not just one of the best metaphors? I think it is. I think it's profoundly true. So that's how you end up with evil. And it's difficult to deal with the face of evil if you don't understand it. People like to think of themselves as good, but if you lived in Nazi-era Germany, there's an overwhelming chance that you would have been a Nazi. How does that happen? Well, it's human nature. The way that it happens is one compromise leads to another compromise, leads to another compromise, leads to another compromise, and it grows and grows and grows. It reverberates outward until the entire being is compromised. When you don't sacrifice appropriately and you don't act appropriately, your life can become a sort of hell. If you keep the cycle going, you will remain in the layers of hell. And the ascension from hell can be quite difficult. And there are plenty of myths that talk about it, the dive into hell and the ascension therefrom. But it's not easy, because when you live in that hell, you're prone to become arrogant and bitter, cruel and angry, and you want to insult reality itself. You want to push back against nature, to destroy the ideal. It's not like the Holocaust or something was something special within history. I mean, it was significant, but what I mean is, you can see that it's human nature and all of the atrocities throughout history. My last video is about Revelation, and it's a pattern of what happens when nations go down the wrong path, the dishonest path, the path of, let's say, a nation who goes to war unjustly for an enemy that has nothing to do with the chaos that was brought into their world. When you act dishonestly, bad things fall. They follow, And has the world been the same since? And you know what I'm talking about. You're here living it with me. Maybe the younger generations who didn't get to witness it might be a little bit too used to this version of the environment. But when we were living in, the 90s, the peacetime was dramatically different than post 9/11. That post Gulf War peacetime was not bound to last too long, and I think a lot of people thought that it actually might. But that's how history goes, right? So to know evil, you have to know that you have the potential to be it. And you have to understand how the compromises can come to be. You have to know them. Because it's easier than you could imagine to fall down that hole and end up in hell. Easier than you can imagine. And bitterness and all that will follow. So once you know that, then you'll find that you're a little bit better prepared against let's say, a totalitarian nation that can build up from it. Because there's this belief, right? So earlier I had said that your decisions, good, negative, positive, and negative matter, and they reverberate. Well, the totality of a nation's sins can lead, to the rise of a totalitarian regime and can lead to the fall of a nation. Just like Cain, each generation of evil wrongdoings that reverberated outward, that's what happens in reality. You can build the desire for vengeance. Look at modern times and how people constantly need a boogeyman. Once one is taken down or canceled, let's say, another one is immediately put up in its place. If you can personify the evil, then you have a movement that can build from it. And this is not unique to one political side or another. All you have to do is turn the political thought into a theology. And remember what I said earlier, people defend their beliefs like they defend territories. And the unknown is seen as threatening to them. So Nazi Germany, they turned the Jews into their boogeyman, the gypsies into the unknown, and they tried to eradicate what they saw as the snake within their garden. And so you can kind of see how that happens and how that sort of still happens. People defending their political beliefs as though they're religious beliefs, as if it's their territory because they've allowed it to become an ideology. Give me a second here, guys. I'm going to open this gate and get home. If I could, I always forget which key it is. There we go. Alright, push, not pull. Alright. Okay, so I don't mean to be so negative. I know my previous videos have been really positive, but there is a positive message to tie to this. It doesn't have to go in this negative path, because if each person is a center of the universe, and the universe is complicated, it has many centers. If each person holds within them, the spark of divinity, then, well, you can start to see that. Yes, each negative action you make may push the world closer, to the brink of destruction, but the opposite is true as well. And so each positive action that you make pulls humanity back away from it. And once you know that, that your actions have that kind of weight, you can make more effort to make a positive impact on the world. Because a lot of people believe that they're insignificant, and that's just not true. And each one of us has a little bit of divinity inside of us, and one human being can change the whole course of history. That's a hefty burden, but just know all you have to do is make a few small positive decisions. I mean, you don't have to move the world. You just have to make an effort to make the appropriate sacrifices to better your own life and to admit when you're wrong and not impose your beliefs onto everyone else, and recognize that you don't have to necessarily physically fight everybody over your belief system, your theology. All right, love you guys. Have a good one. I'm at home now. We'll go more into this later. Peace out, and be good.